Milwaukee got Giannis back, but it didn't matter because Superman traded in his cape for a Heat uniform. Jimmy Butler dropped 21 points in the fourth quarter at a Heat franchise record 56 points in the game, a historic, incredible, impossible performance that gives Miami a 3-1 lead in their series versus the Bucks. Are the Bucks on the ropes? And is Miami on the verge of making history? We break down the game. Game 4 win, a special edition of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. However, you might be tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And this game was far from guaranteed, David. The Heat down 10 with 6 minutes to go. It was 101-89. I was preparing for a losing podcast, right? Kind of putting my notes together and all these things. And all of a sudden, things start changing a little bit. The Heat offense up until then struggled to get any real decent looks. They were kind of hanging in the game, but only because they were making like these tough shots for most of the game. Jimmy Butler had an amazing first quarter, scoring 22 points, 20 straight at one point for the Heat. Giannis, in his return back from game 4, him, Brook Lopez, they were imposing their will on the game for most of the first 40 minutes of this thing. Absolutely. The Bucks were on their way to tying this series 2-2 and basically shifting a momentum. And then Jimmy Butler did Jimmy Butler things, and then even Caleb Martin sprinkling in some Caleb Martin things. Kyle Lowry sprinkling in some Kyle Lowry things. The Heat go on a 30-13 run to close the game. Jimmy Butler accounting for 19 of those points. He has 56 points overall in the game. It's a franchise high for points in a playoff game. There was so much to get to in this one, David, whether it's how that run happened, the fact that the Heat are now up 3-1 in this series over what was the betting favorite to win the championship before the playoffs started. A lot going into how things have turned, but the headline is Jimmy Butler, masterpiece, epic performance, 56 points. I don't know where to begin with this other than just his greatness.
Yeah, that's where you start, and that's pretty much where you finish. You look at this game, and it's absolutely inexplicable. Like, you can break down the film. We'll watch it again tomorrow. We'll try to make some sense of it. But none of it matters without Jimmy just having a transcendent performance that seemed to leap beyond even what we were witnessing there. Like, I've seen a lot of basketball in my life. So have you. And at the same time, I don't know that I've seen a performance quite as great as this one.
When did you realize he had 56 points?
Not till the very end of the game.
Yeah, I was so just enthralled with watching what was happening in front of me that if you would have asked me how many points he had without looking at the box score, I knew it was a lot. I probably would have said like 40, 44, something in that. And I looked down, I'm like, he had 56 points. 56 points. He goes 19 of 28 overall, 3 of 8 from three-point range, took the most three-pointers on the team, 15 of 18 from the free throw line, finally got to the free throw line, something that he had kind of been struggling with low-key for most of this series. Had 9 rebounds, a couple assists. I don't care about any of that. I just care about the 56 points. That was unbelievable. Jimmy Butler was the first guy to tell you he doesn't care about the box score, doesn't care about how many points he scores. Right. And for the most part, I believe him, right? Like in the regular season, he does not score 56 points. He is not a guy that does that. But he comes out tonight, the 22 points in that first quarter where the Heat were down. They started this game down 15-5. Yeah. Giannis giving them energy. They looked like the Bucks were going to be in control. They had all the urgency. They had every reason to go out and win this game. And the Heat had every reason to just like lay down when they were down 10 midway through just chalk it up. Congrats, you got Giannis back. We're going back to Milwaukee with the series split 2-2. We still got a chance in this series. We feel pretty good about it, but we lost Vic. We lost Todd. Every reason to just roll over. And instead, they don't. And Jimmy Butler just goes on a tear for 19 straight points over 6 minutes. And he's doing it over he's hunting mismatches and sometimes trying to get Brook Lopez off the dribble, drawing Grayson Allen into coverages and things like that. But sometimes also just being like, Drew Holiday, you're supposed to be the best perimeter defender in the NBA. Yeah. I don't care. I'm going to go right by you. Chris Middleton, you want a chance? I don't care. I'll go right by you. Giannis, who might actually be the best defender in the NBA, he went right by Giannis a bunch of times too. So it's just one of those things where you just sit there and you watch and you're like, what on God's green earth is happening right now? How and you just, I guess in my case, I feel fortunate to be here for this game.
Yeah,
just
no
and to witness it.
It was a very bizarre game. Again, you pointed out the momentum shifting so completely in that first quarter. And even at that point, like they closed the gap to 5 at the end of the first quarter, and it's just kind of going back and forth. And every time Miami seemed to close it just a little bit, get to within 7 or 9, it seemed like there was an answer from the Milwaukee Bucks, whether it was Brook Lopez as part of his 36 points, Giannis having a triple-double in his first game back after missing a couple due to injury. Like they just seem to have a response for everything. And again, you're down 12 in the fourth quarter with 6 minutes left of the game, 101-89. You're going on a 13-0 run to take the lead. And even at that point, still not completely secure, but you certainly feel the momentum shifting in Miami's favor. Jimmy, a big part of it, but he's also deflecting it to a great degree, talking about it being a total team win, that everybody's going to focus on the points, but recognizing and acknowledging Kyle, Caleb, Bam doing what he could defensively, getting contributions up and down the roster.
Yeah.
Everybody playing their role, I'd say well, some playing it better than others, and then just allowing Jimmy to do what he does best. Incredible performance from him.
Caleb Martin, Kyle Lowry deserve shout outs for that run. It was a 30-13 run to close the game and get this win. Caleb Martin, 7 points, 3 rebounds, and a steal in that final stretch. Kyle Lowry had that big steal. He stole from Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton or something. They were trying to call a timeout, and Lowry just came in and was like, "Nope, my ball."
Yep.
And it turned into a transition bucket for the Heat. And it was just stuff like that. And I can't explain it. Even Eric Spoelstra after the game said the first 40 minutes were really frustrating, but the Heat have won a lot of games where they've been very frustrated within that game. and I thought it was really well said on Eric Spoelstra's part. And it was like the first 40 minutes, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, this
are we starting to drink the Kool-Aid that all those clutch games throughout the regular season?
I'm bathing in the Kool-Aid right now. Like I, you know me, I'm pretty level-headed with this thing. I don't like kind of get into the homerism stuff. But like that was just
praising over the moment here.
No, it was special to watch. And regardless of what happens in this series, that it kind of goes down like the Game 6 game for Jimmy Butler in the finals last year. I don't really care that much that they lost in the Eastern Conference Finals because I have that Game 6. Like that Game 6 isn't, I should say, not tainted by the fact that they lost that series. Where this game, I'm going to remember this, man. Like this was one of the best games, one of the most crazy performances, incredible performances I've ever covered in person, man. Like it just is. And
43 points between the first and last quarters of the game, and it's just incredible. Like,
and more than anything now, the Heat have a 3-1 series lead.
This was so close to being like a footnote in Jimmy's incredible performance, but without that performance, you don't get that 3-1 lead. And here you are now. Giannis, welcome back. No excuses on the Bucks' part. Not that they'd make any anyway, because I think they have enough to be able to beat Miami even without Giannis in the lineup. They got a great performance from him. He looked incredible early on. He was doing it.
Giannis was great, man. He like no lower back injury.
Yeah. He did not look like he was nursing any kind of injury whatsoever. And yet, again, it was just Jimmy carrying the team, and now a 3-1 lead. And it's just, it's hard to put into context because here we are minutes after the game ended. We just talked to players. You just see it all play out, and it's still, we're kind of just processing everything. And here they are with a 3-1 lead on the precipice of making history. I know the other 8-1 seeds have
it's been a while, though.
But it has been a while. This was unexpected. Nobody, us included, we've written off the team. We had discounted whether or not they would be able to muster any sort of
I said
energy.
They had no chance after game 2. I said they had no chance, and I am eating those words right now because they're up 3-1, and they definitely have a chance now. They definitely have a chance. How much of a chance? I think we're going to talk about that in the next segment, David. But first, tell listeners about our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Jimmy Butler and Gametime. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee so you can stop stressing over tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I love that you can buy a ticket through their app, and when you can see exactly where you're going to be sitting. No questions or worries about whether or not you might be hiding behind something or a speaker might be in your way, or maybe you won't be able to get a good view of whatever event it is that you want to go to. With Gametime, you see exactly what you're buying. You get the best deal available. You save money and get the right ticket for you and your friends to be able to enjoy special events. If you're in town for a day, or if you're even wherever you live, you want to go to a special concert. There's so many here in South Florida. If you want to go to a Heat game, you can still get tickets using Gametime. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, you can create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today's episode also brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Place your first bet. You get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet of up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official bet partner of the Major League Baseball.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every dayers, we're going to be joined by Howard Beck to talk about Jimmy Butler's performance, the series overall on our next episode. You can also reach Locked On Heat on Twitter, Instagram. You can email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. We'll get to our questions later on in the show. One last stat on Jimmy Butler, tied for the 4th most points ever scored in a playoff game. That's what we just saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
4th most playoff all time?
Yeah.
I find that incredible. I mean, look, defenses key in, defenses are better, and so you're going to limit performances. You don't get the random 70-point or 80-point outing or anything like that. I mean, those are incredible performances to witness, but they don't usually happen during the playoffs. When the stakes are highest, when the teams are better, when the defenses are better, to turn into performance like this, we witness history.
Yep.
There's no way around it.
Michael Jordan, #1, 63 points.
Yes,
Elgin Baylor had against who?
The Boston Celtics.
Elgin Baylor, 61 points. He's '2. Donovan Mitchell had 57 points.
That's
Why
right.
is he always on these lists?
That was in the bubble, wasn't it? I think it was.
It was in those Nuggets, Jazz. Those were great games. And then Jimmy Butler tied with Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, and Charles Barkley with 56 points. So
that's some good company.
He is the best player in this series right now.
Look, we're kind of spinning this a little bit. Jeremy Teche on the Dan Le Batard show making a comment, kind of,
and it was ridiculous. No, and it was a ridiculous thing for Jeremy to say. It was ridiculous, Jeremy. That was ridiculous. You ended up being right.
He is right. He was
this
right
game.
Anyway.
He ended up being right, and Giannis was 26 points, 10 rebounds, 13 assists. He had a triple-double, man, in a coming back from a lower back injury.
Nobody even noticed it. I pointed it out, and somebody, when I was like in the media workroom, was like, really? A triple-double? Because it was just kind of a footnote. Brook Lopez had 36 points.
Yes.
I talked about it in our preview this morning that he was going to probably shoot more threes. He wound up having 7. He was 4 of 7 from behind the arc. He was fantastic, inside, outside, doing everything, and yet it didn't matter.
Yeah,
you've got Jimmy Butler on
all the things that we said that the Heat could not let happen or do is what they did. They allowed Brook Lopez to dominate in the paint. They allowed Giannis to come back and play really, really well. The Bucks scored 24 points off of Miami turnovers. The rebounding edge wasn't really anything to speak of until the very end. The Heat actually had a 47-46 edge. That's only because of the last 6 minutes. Before that, they were down in the rebounding battle. The three-pointers were only going in. They weren't generating good looks really at all. And they were just making shots, including Jimmy Butler going 3 of 8. So nothing that you could get count on in terms of sustainable.
42 minutes, it was a bad game.
It was a bad, like the Heat were not playing well. And I said, like, they could have just rolled over. I think a lot of teams would have, and just chalked it up to Giannis coming back and a better, the #1 seed on the other side, and just say, you know what, let's go back to Milwaukee, lick our wounds, and try to get the bet 2 of the next 3. That's not what happened. Now the Miami and what sticks out to me so much about this game, not just the Jimmy Butler performance, how close this was to being a 2-2 series, the Bucks in total control, getting Giannis back. We were so close to the story out of this game, David, being the Bucks got Giannis back. They looked like the Milwaukee Bucks again. They beat the Heat handedly, and the series is going back to Milwaukee with the Bucks in total control of this thing. We were 6 minutes away from that being – we were 6 minutes and a Jimmy Butler all-timer away from that being the story out of this game, and yet we are not talking about that right now. Instead, we're talking about the fact that the Heat have a 3-1 lead in this series over the team that you and me both picked to go to the championship.
Absolutely.
A lot of people are picking to go to the finals. We're the betting favorites on FanDuel before the playoffs started to go to the finals. And Giannis's injury is a big part of the reason why the Bucks are down 3-1, but also Jimmy Butler, like I said, they were this close to being tied 2-2. The difference in this series right now is Jimmy Butler's 56 points. That's the difference in this series. And now the Heat are up 3-1. All they have to do is win 2 of the next 3. Oh, I'm sorry. One of the next three. Two of the next three are in Milwaukee. One of them are at home. But I'm surprised. I'm in shock. I am in awe. I am impressed. I'm just all of the things. And you look at what can happen on the other side of this. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it's the winner of the Knicks and the Cavs, right? Like you don't have to.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I mean, Milwaukee has a chance.
I don't want to talking about what's at stake here. This is the doorstep that the Heat are standing on.
I don't want to be the Debbie Downer in today's podcast because it's all about living in the moment.
Yes.
At the same time, I'm not looking ahead. I just want to focus on tonight's transcendent, historic performance because what we saw was ridiculous. It was amazing. I've seen a lot of basketball, and again, I've never seen anything like what Jimmy did. Just to be able to do it in the moment, to be able to carry that team. There was nothing else going on. Nobody else was. Look, you had 3 3-pointers from Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent. They were scoreless for much of the game. It was bad performances all around from a lot of his teammates.
The Heat had only one player with more than 11 points going into the fourth quarter. Jimmy Butler, obviously. Like they were getting nothing from anybody
more than
else.
15 points contributing him, and I know it's
Bam was having a hard time scoring.
Yeah, Bam was struggling, and I mean he was contributing in other ways. Kudos to him for being able to find other ways of chipping in and making an impact and imprint on this game.
Yeah.
But nothing like from what we saw from Jimmy Butler.
So you don't want to talk about the fact that the Heat could win this series? Because that's, to me, the big story after the Jimmy Butler
I will
thing.
talk about that they can win the series. I'm not going to go ahead and say that that's basically over. I think –
Are they the favorites to win the series now?
They're not the betting favorites as of now. The betting line just came out as we saw right before we recorded. There's still I can't recall exactly what it is. They're not favored to win just yet.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised by that. I mean, it's got to be closer to even money at this point.
Yeah, it
on
is pretty
FanDuel
close.
Or something like that.
Close,
but yeah, even going into this game with Giannis, the news that Giannis was coming back, the Bucks, the odds shifted more towards the Bucks.
To be the dark cloud and the silver lining, Milwaukee wins Game 5 in Milwaukee. They come back here, steal one there, and the series is tied going back to Game 7.
Well, yeah, I mean that's how the series works. I get it, but
but that's what I'm saying. It's like Miami has to understand, like the work's not done. And maybe I'm echoing what Jimmy Butler and all the other players that spoke are saying, but they recognize that what they did was incredible, fantastic, and they're
okay.
Not
So let me frame it this way. Had this game been 2-2, I don't think any of what the Heat did tonight is sustainable. This feels way closer to Game 1 than it did Game 3. None of what the Heat did tonight is sustainable, and yet they come out with the win. And now what happens is you get closer and closer to a Game 7 or the last game of any series. Sustainability matters less and less the closer you get to the end of a series, right? And so now what we're talking about is if you get one big Duncan Robinson shooting night, one Max Strus avalanche, like one thing like that, one time over the next 3 games, the Heat win this series. That's what we're talking about. Like, if they don't win this series, it's going to be a disappointment, obviously, but they are on the precipice of pulling off this upset. They are on the it was the last time an 8 beat a 1 when the Warriors beat the Mavericks? Was that the last time?
I think it's happened since then. I can't recall exactly when it was. Yeah, but it might be the most recent case. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
I know before that it was the Knicks upsetting the Heat, unfortunately being on the wrong end of that.
Sure, yeah,
it's happened.
They could get revenge in the next series.
Denver knocking off the Seattle Sonics a few years before that.
Yeah, I think the last one was when it
hasn't happened much.
No, that was what? That was 2000.
And I know Bucks fans will say there's an asterisk that it should be there because of Giannis' injury. That doesn't matter. They lose Tyler Herro. They lose Victor Oladipo. Shout out to Jimmy Butler for saying we wanted to win this one for Vic and Tyler because obviously they're it's just hanging over the team, and yet incredible performances.
Yeah.
Tonight.
So, like I said, game.
Are you looking past Milwaukee, or do you think they're going to be able
I
to
think it's important to discuss what's at stake here and what could have been and what is now possible for the Heat, right? Because of what Jimmy, and I think it's me trying to put Jimmy Butler's performance into context. If this was a game in December and it was 56 points, then it's just a win and it doesn't matter as much. But the fact that this was in the playoffs,
yeah, no,
right?
and
it goes from what should have been and was very close to being a 2-2 series with the Bucks in control to now 3-1 with Miami very much in control.
Yeah.
And looking at the other side of what this means, you don't even have the Celtics look pretty good against the Atlanta Hawks. I know they lost game 3 or whatever it was, but like the Knicks are up 3-1 on the Cavaliers, and I think the Knicks look really good in that series. I also think it's a really good matchup for them, the Cavaliers, right? And so the Knicks are beatable. They're certainly more beatable than the Boston Celtics at this point, who I think the Celtics actually just recently moved into the betting favorites after all the Giannis injury and stuff like that. So the fact that you don't even have to deal with Boston until potentially the Eastern Conference Finals again, boy, would they be really pissed to see the Miami Heat in the finals again. You could get the Knicks in the second round. I think the Knicks are very good. The Knicks have owned the Miami Heat this regular season.
Yeah, fun matchup.
But that is a winnable series. That is a winnable series. This is what we're talking about. What Jimmy Butler did tonight is he made that path possible.
It's fine. I will acknowledge that.
This is context.
A possibility. No, it is a possibility, a much greater possibility than it was before the night. And look, I mean, we've talked about this style of play a lot over the course of the series because, again, in Game 2, Milwaukee did something so effective in limiting what Miami does and imposing their will on their offense and showing that even without Giannis, they could be a dominant team. Clearly they were. And yet what we saw in Game 3 was a fantastic performance from Miami. And then tonight, it all goes out. It all goes out to win.
The Bucks played better for most of this game.
The Bucks played better. They got Giannis back. Brooke was fantastic. Look, there were some terrible shooting performances on that end. And a lot of that has to do with Miami's defense, but Drew Holiday really struggled from three-point range. Chris Middleton struggled from the floor, period. He was 4 of 12, 6 of 19 for Holiday. They didn't get the kind of contributions from Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton that you got earlier in the series. So there's been a lot of X factors there that didn't swing in Milwaukee's favor.
They missed a lot of shots at the end. And the Bucks all series have been going like these super long, like 4 or 5 minute stretches without scoring. Right. And you could say that they've probably they've lost. They could lose the series because of those stretches. But also the Bucks offense kind of struggled to kind of get out of its own way and get out of the mud at times during the regular season too. So it's not like a new thing. Yeah. It's not like the Sacramento Kings all of a sudden just couldn't score for 4 minutes. Yeah. Right. Like the Milwaukee Bucks have had a hard time scoring in the half court. And so whatever, man, the Heat are up 3-1. Jimmy Butler's incredible. We're going to talk. Is he the greatest playoff performer in Miami Heat history? We're going to talk about that next. But first, David, tell the listeners about our next sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks with their new $1 million daily super flex promotion during the NBA playoffs and finals. Every day of the NBA playoffs or finals, one PrizePicks user will win a chance at becoming a millionaire. One entry is placed after 8 a.m. Eastern will be randomly selected each day. Whoever placed that entry will be given a 6-pick flex with the following payouts. 6 correct picks get you $1 million. 5 so gets you $80,000. 4 gets you 16. Full details can be found at prizepicks.com/million. You must opt in at this link to be eligible for the $1 million entry. Once you opt in, all you have to do is play the game like normal. And again, so easy to win normally. And they give you everything. They give you so many opportunities to win. It's just you versus the projected numbers. You don't have to worry about competing against anybody else. You just make your entries fast and easy. Payouts are fast. It's great. And you can place any kind of entries you want on any sport. There's so many different options. Just download the PrizePick app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users also receive a $100 instant deposit match of up to $100 with a promo code LOCKEDON. So don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON and download the PrizePicks app today or go to prizepicks.com.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Every dayers, we're going to be joined by Howard Beck to talk about this series, Jimmy Butler's performance, and a whole lot more on our next episode. As always, you can reach us on Twitter, Instagram. You can email us, lockedonheat@gmail.com. Thanks to everybody who sent in questions on Twitter for our post-game show using that hashtag AskLOHeat. Before we get to our question, I want to just read you a tweet from a friend of the show, Bobby Manning, who covers the Boston Celtics for a variety of different outlets, the Boston Sports Journal and things like that. Says, all Boston wanted was for Miami to push the Bucks a little. Now the Heat anxiety is back in Boston. And his mentions are blowing up right now. And for some reason, he tagged me in that. And so now my mentions are blowing up. But you didn't want to get too far ahead of yourself. Even Celtics fans are like, we thought we avoided the Heat because they lost to the Hawks in the play-in tournament. And now there's a possibility that we not only did we maybe not avoid the Miami Heat, we could get them when they are rolling downhill and back in the Eastern Conference Finals potentially. I am not jinxing it. I am not getting that ahead of myself. But I'm just saying that Celtics fans are now looking down the road and thinking, oh boy.
Well, you saw a historic performance from Jimmy. Of course you're going to be worried.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've got a great they've got a great purview on that. But all right. This next question comes in from Dale, who writes in, after what we've seen in the bubble, After what we saw in the Eastern Conference Finals and what we saw tonight from Jimmy Butler, is it fair to say that Jimmy Butler is officially the greatest playoff performer in Miami Heat history? It's a great question. I think it's a good question. But when you consider some of the playoff performers in Heat history, the number one guy you think of is Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Game 6 in the Garden, all that stuff. Like, there's been some really good Mario Chalmers. There's been some great playoff performers. Chalmers. I had to throw him in there. Yeah. No, but like Ray Allen, the shot. I mean, just like that was a moment. But like, there's just been great playoff moments, great playoff performers that have come through this building and played for this franchise. To elevate Jimmy Butler as the best one feels pretty extreme. But I also am kind of struggling to dispute it. I don't know why it wouldn't be.
No, I think you have to start. I mean, again, you mentioned before that total point outing ranks in historical context.
Right, we're talking about NBA history at this point. Yeah.
So it's only one game. And again, it's maybe not in the biggest stage, but as the question pointed out, we've seen Jimmy step up on the finals before. We've seen him step up in the Eastern Conference Finals. He's had big playoff series. He's had big playoff years. You know, I think the one knock you could probably point is to 2021, you know, when they were swept by these very same Bucks. And Jimmy was not stupidly locked in, as he had said. So I think that the kind of discredits the possibility.
Yeah, but that team stunk, and the Bucks won the championship that year.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Look,
I mean,
we've seen
LeBron.
We've seen Dwayne and LeBron struggle as well.
LeBron has the finals in 2011. D-Wade doesn't have that. He doesn't have that level of stinker on his resume. But I don't know that he also has the high. Like, he has the 2006 finals, which is the greatest single series performance in the Heat history. Sure. And then maybe even in finals history, it's up there.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of the absolute height of playoff performers, D-Wade still has the number one just sort of spot, right? But if you kind of take the totality of what he's done, I mean, he was amazing. I mean, he was actually really good in the 2011 finals when LeBron wasn't. But then, 2013 he was fine. 2014 he was not very good. I know that was sort of the tail end of his career past his prime at that point with the knee acting up and all that, but and the maintenance plan and all that. But what Jimmy Butler has now done in 3 separate series, and who knows how this postseason ends for him. I think it's very much in play. You could make an argument that he already is the greatest performer in Heat playoff history. But that's very much, I guess, a crown that's attainable for him.
I think it's also kind of like a stylistic thing. Like, Dwayne was so much more fluid and just so much more athletic than a lot of the competitors that he went against. LeBron was so overpowering and athletic too.
Yeah, I mean, just the IQ, everything is just like the whole. It's what makes him, arguably the greatest of all time is the complete package with him. But to your point,
but Jimmy bullying his way to the line, getting that jumper going, and then hitting 3 of 8 3-pointers. I mean, look, he's a total package. It's a fantastic performance. That's all I can come away with.
It's in play. It's in play to be the greatest playoff performer in Heat history. It's certainly in play. All right, like we said, we're going to have Howard Beck on the show tomorrow to talk about Jimmy Butler's performance, put it into even greater context. Very fortunate to have scheduled Howard Beck when we did. We scheduled this last week, having no idea that this is going to be what we were going to talk about with him the afternoon after a 56-point performance from him.
Conversation is going to be very different now. Like if those 6 minutes don't happen, we're talking about
a few people series. Better to help put it in perspective and in context than Howard Beck, who's been around the league
Kobe
forever.
Bryant comparison to
Jimmy
Butler,
right? It feels very similar. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. We'll be back again. Howard Beck tomorrow. We'll be back with a recap of Game 6, 5, whatever it is. It's the playoffs. I forget what everything means. That'll be coming up after the game. So stick with us. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast. David, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, shout out Jimmy Butler.